podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn and welcome to How We're the podcast from Roker Report. And it's the day after the main event at Wembley, and I imagine I was like all of the Sunderland fans this morning, because the first thing I did was pick up my phone and double check that what I thought had actually happened. But it was there, everywhere I looked. Sunderland are indeed a Premier League club once again. Me and Martin tried unsuccessfully to generate full sentences on the pod we released soon after the final whistle, so my apologies for that. But today we have a voice that is a giant of football commentary, being synonymous with great Champions League, domestic cup finals, Premier League moments, you name it, including Championship Manager 2, which I mentioned to him last time when we chatted to him previously. And now he's having seen this clip all over social media from his commentary for CBS. He's now a voice linked with one of the greatest moments in Sunderland history. We are very pleased to be speaking to Clive Tyldesley. Welcome, Clive.
It's a pleasure to join you, and it was an absolute privilege to be there yesterday. Had a real sense of occasion, and I know I would say this on How We're the podcast, but the Sunderland fans made it. It felt as special as I'm sure it feels to each and every one of you, and that came over from the way that you stuck with the team through what was a difficult final, and the celebrations at the end were what football's about, memories. And you know, the very, very, very best part of the best job in the world is to be a little part of people's memories of great games. And yeah, I mean, I'm not quite sure how anybody's got a hold of the CBS commentary. I'm sure it's not legal, but what the heck? If I'm a small part of your memories of that day, then I'm very honoured.
Clive, when it comes to Sunderland, and I say the message, people didn't actually go to sleep last night. They were soaking up every little video, every little clip, everything they could soak up from social media. And I think your commentary was part of that. That was bouncing around. But we'll come on to that moment, of course, when we go through the game a little bit. But just in terms of sheer drama, where does that moment rank in your many years of commentary? Because you've seen loads of moments of, fans just releasing, whether it's kind of, frustration or whatever it is, that it kind of bubbles over, and these moments just happen. And, where does that one rank?
Well, it's the most dramatic thing that's happened to Sunderland for 11 days.
yeah, since the last one.
I mean, I think in a sense, Dan's equaliser, whatever you want to call it, winner, because it happened where it happened, will certainly be as big a part of your recollections of this playoff campaign as Tommy's goal yesterday. I mean, I had a great mentor in commentary, sadly not with us anymore, a boxing commentator, funnily enough. Reg Guttridge taught me 95% of whatever I know about communication, let alone commentary. And one of the things that he said to me to distraction was that every goal, every moment in football is different. And so it deserves its own words. And if you're fortunate enough to call a last-minute winner in a championship playoff final or a Champions League final, whatever, then amazing, brilliant, incredible isn't enough. You've got to come up with something which captures the moment and its uniqueness. And I'd read a lot about, the boos that Tommy heard immediately after the announcement that he was off to Brighton. And one thing I would never, ever, ever do is try to tell football fans how to support their club. There's a similar thing happening at Liverpool at the moment with Trent Alexander-Arnold. And it's difficult because he is one of your own. He's from just down the road. He's 19 years of age. He owes his career to the club, but he is in charge of his own life. He can make his own decisions. It may well appear to the club to have been good business when it happened. It may well still be. But you've just got to somehow try and cut through your instant feelings and your gut feelings and your core feelings, the feelings that drive your commitment and your love for your football club, and try to put yourself in the shoes of a 19-year-old kid who's given an opportunity. And there was a lovely kind of irony, or I don't know what the right word is, about him being the man. And as he ran away and took his shirt on, thank goodness he hadn't had a yellow card earlier. I hate it. I hate it when players you know what's coming. Wait a minute. Anyway, he did it, and he looked better than I did. So yeah, sure, go on, off you go. And I said, the prodigal son. I don't know where it came from. I don't know why. But I had sort of thought about it, the reaction to him. And of course, I hadn't witnessed it personally. I didn't know how loud or often the boos had been for him, the prodigal son. And I said something about some Sunderland fans had fallen out of love with him following his decision, but they're all in love with him now. And actually, you know, as much as you listen back to commentaries, and I haven't had the opportunity to listen back to this commentary yet, and the number of times I say that, I think, oh, why did I say that? Oh, you idiot. Oh, no, that's not even right. But yeah, I think Reg would have been pleased with the fact that I found something which was actually very relevant to the moment. And it is actually, of all the stories that have come out of this very memorable day for all of you, the fact that it is one of your own, and one that you'd maybe turned on a little bit. And there you go. Regis stuck with him, and the boys stuck with him. Apparently the whole squad were very, very happy for him to be there and be part of it all until he leaves. And there's the reward. It was a wonderful moment for him and for everybody.
Yeah, well, I think that's the best yellow card I think he'll ever pick up in his career, to be honest, taking his shirt off like that.
Do it.
Yeah. And I promise you that's not going to be the last time we talk about that goal, because we'll come on to that in the game itself. We talked about the huge games that you've done, you know, Champions League finals, for instance, you know, we mentioned those. But do you find that the playoff final, especially the second tier playoff final, a strange one? Because the Champions League, yeah, you don't get me wrong, huge trophy victory that's going to be in the history of the club. But this game could define a club and what happens to it for the next 5 or 10 years.
It's the most horrible game to lose. And I made reference to that beforehand. And let me declare my hand straight away. Chris Wilder's a good friend, and I really, really feel for him today. Really feel for him. My daughter lives in Sheffield, and my son-in-law, and they go occasionally to Bramall Lane. They're not kind of die in the wood blades, but yeah, it would have been a good result for them. They were at a wedding, so they didn't go. And yeah, there are a lot of reasons, and we all know the reasons why Sheffield United deserved to be in the Premier League. But that's not your concern to feel sorry for Sheffield United today. Let the rest of football do that, because they knew the rules at the start of the season. You knew the rules at the start of the season. We all know how this works, and the team that scores the most goals in the playoff final is promoted, and it's that simple, and everybody knows that. And you can score an equaliser in the last minute of the semi-final, and Frank Lampard can say, oh, we were the better team. And you can score a winner in the last minute of the final, and Sheffield United will probably feel they were the better team. If you were scoring it round by round, as a boxing judge might, then, you know, they maybe got it on points. But that doesn't matter. That's none of your concern. That shouldn't take, and I'm sure it's not, taking a 1 percentage point away from your right to celebrate. This is a monster that we've created, you know. And I was in Bilbao last Wednesday for the pretty grim Europa League final, and I said before the game then that this is more of a playoff final than it is a cup final, because actually I think the trophy means a lot to Tottenham. But actually, it was the Champions League place they were playing for, and the windfall that goes with that. And it was a lovely moment that, you know, Luke with his hand in a sling, and Dan, the local boy, can go up and he can actually lift a trophy, and it kind of deserves that moment. But it's not about that piece of silverware. That's not a major trophy. The major boost is the promotion, and it's 90 minutes to settle 9 months of hard work, and so it's a brutal creation. I wrote a blog last week which said it's football Squid Game, and it is. You know, no, somebody doesn't get out of here alive. Basically, certainly their dreams don't get out of here alive, and you know that there's no gallant losers on playoff final day, and I I had a quick scout through the ages and divided it by 11, and it was under 23. So, there were lots of reasons why you could pat the boys on the back if it hadn't happened yesterday. But it's still an awful feeling to be travelling all the way back to Wearside with that dream just, vanquished in the space of 90 minutes. And that's obviously the feeling that Sheffield United have got. But you don't need to worry about any of that. That's none of your concern. This is a monster that we've created. And as I say, everybody knows how it works. And you made it work. You made it work, and you certainly played well enough in the last 15, 20 minutes to feel as if you could win the game.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking there when you were talking that in the build-up to the second tier playoff final, and you could do a sweepstake with it, really. How many times you hear the term the richest game in football being rolled out in the build-up to the game. But does that not take some of the romantic element out of it? Because you see a moment like that and you see Sunderland getting promoted, and I don't think the club's coffers are on the minds of any fan who is in that stand. It's just purely about Sunderland being where, you could debate it all day, but where Sunderland fans want to believe their club should belong and rubbing shoulders with the top teams in the country.
Yeah, and I think there is plenty of romance in that. There's a practical element. And Sunderland's average attendance this season would have been the 9th highest in the Premier League this season. This is a big club. And how do you define a big club? Well, actually, your fan base is probably the biggest definition of the club. The fan base, and I think the way the fan base identifies, the whole area identifies with the club. And Sunderland, like Newcastle, are one of those clubs that don't have a lot of fans in Croydon and Esher and, wherever you want to name in the south of England. You're not a Manchester United or, a Liverpool in that sense.
We're not one for the glory fans, I assure you of that.
Well, no, your fans live somewhere between the Tyne and the Tees. That's where your fans live, and so you live, eat and breathe this football club, and the football club is very much a part of the identity of the area. And so there is a huge romance involved, and particularly when you've got a stadium where 40,000 of you can go for every home game. Even those rubbish ones, even those last 5 games of the season, even the bad times, even the cup tie against Newcastle last season. But you do all of that together. You share all of that together. And so I think there is a great romance involved in the size of the prize that you can all enjoy and celebrate together. I mean, I don't know how many of those 82,000, but it must have been close on 45. I mean, there was a whole tier of the Sheffield United end that was empty.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people, Chris. That's a lot of people to travel together 200 and odd miles and share the same identity, the same pride. And it actually does the area a whole lot of good. I think wandering around the middle of Sunderland on Saturday afternoon must have been like a ghost town. I mean, everybody was, obviously they were either in front of the TV, but it would have been the only game this season that quite a few Wearsiders watched. Quite a few, uncles and aunties and whatever, people who just haven't really got football, but they would have watched the game. And I know, obviously, I've got friends, not name dropping too much, but Dave Jones is a friend, Steve Cram's a friend. Our videographer who does our social media for commentary charts is a big Sunderland fan, So I know what it means to win anything, but to win this ultimate prize, this ultimate passport, this ticket to dreams. And you talk all you like about the money, and I'm sure when people are going to start comparing your turnover with those of you're entering the playground of Arab sheikhs and American media moguls now, and it looks like you're in good hands. It looks like the chairman's a good guy, and he's young enough to play in the bloody team, but he's obviously moneyed. He obviously can support the recruitment effort, and you need to get on with it. You're already a month behind Leeds and Burnley in that sense. I think it's 81 days now, is it, to the start of the Premier League? Good luck with that. And we all know that even with victory, a couple of the younger players may be tempted away, and it looks like Job's going to go. So it is going to be a challenging summer, but forget that now. I mean, have the headaches, have the memories, see Tommy's goal over and over again, see Patterson's saves over and over again, see my Ender's goal over and over again. See the moment that the VAR decided to send Chris Kavanagh to the monitor because we knew what was happening the moment he went. Yeah. He wasn't coming back with any good news for Sheffield United, that's for sure. Yeah. So, I mean, laugh and remember how you got there, the traffic jams, everything about the day, and there's loads of romance in that.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned about Sunderland on Saturday afternoon. There's a very famous documentary done by Tyne Tees at the time. You probably find it on YouTube, where they actually do a documentary of the Sunderland streets on the day of the 73 Cup final. And I think the only people that could find on the streets were people crowded around the old TV shops that had it on the windows. And that was about it. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the narrative of the game, look, you probably had the same stats in front of you that we were looking at. The United side costing £68 million, Sunderland's £8 million. I think Brewster on his own cost more than Sunderland's whole starting 11 combined. It was also the youngest ever side to have played in a second tier playoff final, and all
got younger when Luke got injured. Weirdly,
exactly. Yeah, but it all went into this narrative. The fact that Sunderland were underdogs and Sheffield United seemed like huge favourites in all of the build-up.
I think tactically, as much as I'm in a position to analyse the game, probably one of the things that we felt might swing this for Sheffield United was the depth of the squad and the strength of the bench. And actually, I think the Sunderland substitutes had a bigger impact on the game than the Sheffield United substitutes did. I mean, Trey taking out Brereton Diaz helped in that sense because he wasn't around very long to find out whether he was going to have an impact on the game. But I think that Patrick Roberts, who I gather the Sunderland jury's still kind of out on, I thought he had a real impact on the game. When Enzo moved back into the position that he did, it was like a different player had come on because I thought he looked a bit lost. It's strangely because I think you've all been waiting to see him in a number 10 role and a genuine number 10 role. And the game was kind of passing him by a little bit in that area for one reason or another. He didn't have enough of the ball really for him to prosper. But it's given you food for thought. He looked a conventional central midfield player in the last 20 minutes. And I pretty much started to run the game in that period. So one way and another, if you throw Tommy's goal into the equation, that one of what we perceived to be the great strengths of Sheffield United was countered, seen and risen by the impact that I think the Sunderland changes made on the game.
Yeah. And look, let's just get straight into the first minute because Sheffield United almost took the lead before they even kind of got comfortable watching it. Great cross into the box. Kiefer Moore, who caused us all sorts of problems early on, especially the first half. But Patterson, I mean, you go back to Jimmy Montgomery and that save at Wembley, and okay, this didn't get a domestic trophy or anything, but, if Sunderland do go on to bigger things in the next 5-10 years or whatever, people are going to keep coming back to this save because first minute, and it would change the game completely at this point, especially with what happened to Luke O'Nien. I mean, such a blow if that went in and lost Luke O'Nien at the same time, but the ball ended, he almost took the ball from behind him on the line. At first, I was questioning when I saw it in full speed whether it went behind the line.
Me too. Yeah. It was a breathtaking save. I mean, it really was one of those. And actually, as a commentator, you have that kind of little stumble where you think, wow, have I just seen what I've seen? And I actually think that, we talk a lot about incidents in games. And again, I mean, let's talk about a game that happened very recently. The nature of the Tottenham Hotspur winner in Bilbao on Wednesday, kind of summed the game up. But in a weird sort of way, I think if you're Manchester United, you think, well, have we conceded that? But we can deal with that. I mean, that's just kind of fate taking a hand and bad luck. But when you're attacking in the way that Sheffield United were at the beginning, and the cross is so perfect and the header's pretty much perfect, he can't do a great deal more, really, Kiefer Moore, than what he did. And you think, wow, this guy's good. In the same way, by the way, I think the Sheffield United goal did the same. You thought, oof, didn't know they were quite that good. It was. I think that was a stunning goal too, and I think it probably set you back a little bit. You thought, listen, this is the first time we've attacked them, and look, we've won a corner, and what's happened? Harmer and Campbell have come up with two Premier League quality pieces of skill, and you're not only one down, but you're one down to a pretty stunning goal. So I do think those moments are big in what is a very emotional game to begin with. I think they are actually quite telling. And I actually think the save with his foot from Brooks, was it? And yeah. Brooks probably thought he'd done him. I think Brooks looked as if he was going to open his body and hit it in the big side of the goal, and he kind of tried to drag it back. And Anthony reacted. It wasn't like it just hit him. He reacted. He had to almost adjust again. And it, in its way, it was as big a save, or not a bigger save, really, because at that stage, next goal wins, I think. So, and I mean, I'm not the first person to point this out. Local boy is man of the match. Local boy picks up the trophy. Yeah. Local boy scores the winning goal. Yeah. Not only is it a young team, but there were 4, were there, in the end, who were born within probably 50 miles of the Stadium of Light. And I think that should mean a lot to a club which, as I say, is such an important kind of rallying point for a community, for an area, for a very, very proud sort of the Wearside nation. And I think, yeah, it's great that Anthony sort of excelled on the big day.
Yeah. It was like the commentary of the 73 Cup final with Brian Moore. I think when he was commentating on that, they actually thought it hit the stanchion or something like that, because they didn't quite believe Montgomery had got to the ball that day. And it was a bit like that. It was unbelievable. But yeah, in that first half, a lot of conversation in the build up to it was that actually, with looking at the two sides, neither side wanted a lot of possession of the football. And actually what seemed to happen in that first half was Sheffield United seemed much better at sitting in and allowing Sunderland to have the ball, and we didn't want it. So it seemed like at the beginning of the game, especially maybe first hour or so, Chris Wilder definitely got the better of that tactical battle for at least an hour.
Yeah, I think the goal makes a difference, and particularly if what you're saying is true, and I think there's a lot of truth in that, because now Sunderland have got to get on the ball. They've got to respond. They've got to react because they're a goal down, and nearly 2 goals down. So and it was a really disappointing first half from your point of view. I mean, I would think, and I'm not putting words in the mouths of any of the 45,000 of you were there, but I would think the discussion at half-time was, wow, when the 8 minutes came up, I'm thinking, no, we just need to get in the dressing room, up 0-1, we'll take that, and then we'll have another look at this game and see if we can do anything different. And I was a little bit surprised that the same 11 came out, to be honest, because I thought you'd kind of got away with the first half a little bit, and something would have to change. And it wasn't until the substitution started to happen that the game, the flow of the game did start to change. But it's a very strong Sheffield United team. Physically, they're older, they're more mature. 2 or 3 of them have played in really, really big games before. And to have that 1-goal advantage and to have charge of the game. I mean, there were times when they were just kind of resting with the ball at the back. Robinson, who, yeah, I mean, probably being brutal, is a championship player, but he's a very experienced championship player. I think Ahmed Hodzic has got a bit about him, and those two were just sort of passing it side to side. And it was like if you weren't careful, that this was just going to get away from you without you having really landed a blow, without, it would have been one of those days when you're going home thinking, we just didn't turn up. We're better than that. And that's the worst kind of defeat, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everything you're saying, and I'm looking, because I was writing notes during the game, and you are saying word for word the notes that I put down. I thought we were bullied. I thought that we didn't turn up. I thought that we looked nervous, and that incident on the half hour. Excuse me. when VAR, which hold my hand up, I've always absolutely loved VAR, by the way, Clive. Never knocked VAR in my...
Now you're lying.
But
the Sunderland fans even booed when the VAR was announced before the game. It's not his fault.
But I guarantee you, Clive, because we've seen enough games in the Championship, this is a goal in the Championship. No doubt about it. The linesman...
It is a goal in the Championship because it's given. And I had Rob Green with me, England international goalkeeper, played in 3 Championship playoff finals for 3 different clubs and didn't actually lose. He lost a penalty shootout, but won the other 2, over 700 games. And he said the goalkeeper is not saving that. And that, actually, having said that once he was said to the monitor, it's not usually good news. The length of time that Chris Kavanagh spent at the monitor, I thought, no, he's going to stick with this. There's almost like a 15, 20 second where they nod their head. You've made a right Ricky, mate. Just have another look and go back and do the square and we'll get on with life and nobody will be any the wiser. But he didn't. He hung around, didn't he? I wasn't privy, usually as a commentator, we're privy to the conversation. I didn't hear it.
Yeah. But did they make a change? Because it was. I don't know. They described it as a different type of offside, where
I don't know.
Because normally they just draw the lines and that's it.
And I don't think you want to know.
No, but they allowed the referee to go over to the screen, which doesn't normally happen in offside, and they had the addition of the referee announcing it. So it seemed like they changed a couple of things up for the playoff final.
Well, I think the announcements were something that we knew was going to happen. That happened in the League Cup too, in the Carabao Cup. You probably didn't watch the Carabao Cup final,
no, not at all.
But it happened in that too. And by the way, it's they've kind of given into pressure that the fans in the stadium have no idea. And actually, the fans in the stadium have still no idea. You can't really hear the announcement. It's 30 seconds of our life we'll never get back. You just get on with it, you know. I mean, I am a fan of VAR, but and it would be one of several buts. The biggest problem with VAR is it's operated by human beings. That's the biggest problem with VAR. And I think there is an inherent unfairness when VAR is arbitrarily introduced for some FA Cup ties, as it has been, and not for others. And I think there is an unfairness in that you played the whole regular season and 2 semi-finals without it. And, I think Chris Wilder's right, very much within his rights to say, this is a goal in the 50-odd games we've played so far this season. And you can argue the toss all you like about the impact that the offside play was having on the goal. It's probably that's the kind of argument that football people are always going to have and always would have and did have before VAR. What you can probably argue more strongly about is whether it should have been there in the first place.
Yeah. But I love VAR. I'm not going to hear a bad word said about it until next season. But actually, I
have those T-shirts now with a I and then a heart and VAR. They'll sell. By the way, somebody enterprising listening to this will be on the streets of Sunderland within 48 hours with an armful of I love VAR.
They'll sell until the opening day of the season when one goes against us. And then they'll go out. But actually, just on that, because I wrote something on our website last week or the week before. Actually, it was just after the Dan Ballard moment, because in the Championship, we see a goal scored, we have a glance over to the linesman, you'd see his flag hasn't gone up, so we celebrate like crazy. Now, does VAR change the dynamics of celebrating? That actually you almost stop yourself. You maybe go 60, 70%. So it takes that element of just going absolutely crazy when your club scores.
Yeah, and no people are more aware of that than the commentators, because we have to kind of go through those emotions you have to try and reflect the emotion of the game and the emotion of the game. And sometimes often a goal is celebrated twice now. Once when it goes in and once when the referee finally pushes. So it's changed everything. But I do. Yeah, it's not an argument for today or for this podcast. But I do believe that if we have science available to make more accurate decisions, then we should use that science. There are a couple of ifs in that sentence, unfortunately. The technology is still fairly new. and then the application of it is still carried out by human beings. And I'm not even going to say it. There would have. I like it when I like to see a referee go to the monitor and say, oh, I'm sticking with my decision. It doesn't happen often enough. And I did think, I didn't care one way or another, the truth told, but I did think he was going to. I thought he was there for long enough to say, nah.
I did.
He's never saving that. It's a goal.
Yeah, I did. I genuinely thought, because when it went over, I was getting messages to say this is going to go that way, and I wasn't sure. But yeah, so that was the first moment. The second moment you've touched on, 68 minutes. Dennis Sirkin, I don't know whether he forgot where he was or didn't realise what was happening, allowed the ball to bounce a couple of times, and then Brooks went through, sent Patterson the wrong way, but Patterson managed to make a brilliant save with his legs. Then Ballard made an even more important challenge just a second after by blocking the follow-up. But it seemed to me that, 3 minutes later that we made the subs where Labrie made that. But you could also hear the Sunderland fans after that chance, because we'd had the VAR decision. Patterson had made this second save. Labrie realised at this point he needed to make a change. And this period of 3 or 4 minutes, and you could hear the Sunderland fans respond to the fact that we're getting another lifeline. And Sunderland fans cranked it up a couple of levels.
Definitely.
And it seemed to me that those 3 or 4 minutes, everything just seemed to, you could feel a change after that.
And of course they feel it. Your opponents feel it too. I mean, the goals still come. I think once the goal's scored, my Ender's goal I'm talking about, you can kind of trace back through the last 4 or 5 minutes and thinking they were better. But you still have to say the goal came out of the blue. You mentioned Dan Ballard, by the way. I thought he was outstanding. I just thought not only did he do the things that he did in the semi-final in terms of defending and at a time when he needed to defend, but I thought his passing of the ball had a lot of purpose about it. He was almost the one who was trying to put a bit of tempo into what you were doing. It all become a bit safe. And he was the one who was passing it forward and passing it firmly. And I thought he was really, really, I mean, you look back, and obviously I'm sad enough to have kept appearance stats and everything for the season. He hasn't played a lot of the season. And sort of Chris Meppen deserved to be a part of it, really, because he's been such a big part of your season. But I thought Dan, he was obviously Patterson's man of the match, your man of the match for the impact he's made on the game. But I thought Dan probably wasn't too far behind him personally. If I'm looking at players who did particularly well. The equalising goal is beautifully taken. The first touch is really good, and the finish is proper. And he wasn't in the game a lot, and it's talking more generally in terms of the role of the main central striker in football today. Again, going back to Bilbao, it's a thankless task. Yeah, I mean, Højlund's not the greatest player in the world, but Solanke's a good striker. And I mean, even Erling Haaland gets like 12 kicks a game. It's nonsense, really, what we've done to these number 9s in the game. And it was great to see both teams play basically 2 up in the semis. That was nice. And it was a big call to leave Isidore out with all those goals and stuff. And I thought Mayenda did his best, really, against firm, physical centre-backs with very little ball. There were a couple of times he twisted away and got half free in the first half. And I'm not sure that's really his role, is it? Kind of lone front man. But he stuck at it, and it was terrific that, once a little bit of help came, and Isidore didn't make a massive impact on the game, but I think he made an impact on what Mayenda could contribute from there onwards. And yeah, he took his goal beautifully. He really did.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're joining my campaign, Clive, to bring back 4-4-2 and wingers and the big man, little man and all of that sort of stuff. But you're absolutely right, because we talked about Wilder getting that tactical battle right for the first hour or so. But these changes, not just Lefebvre moving back into that role, but getting Lefebvre just on the ball full stop, and Patrick Roberts not being told clearly not to just hug the touchline and wait for the ball from the fullback, because he wandered inside, took the ball from Lefebvre. Fantastic run from Mayenda peeling off the defender. But to consider how young he is, he was out on loan last season to Hibs. The move didn't work out for him. The Hibs fans were saying, he's okay, but not quite good enough. He's come back this season, and apparently scouts have been watching him all season now because of the form he's been in. But to take that ball with one touch on his left and then smash it with his wrong foot, with his right foot, into the roof of the net in a occasion like that, where when you have a bit of time on the ball, actually, sometimes the occasion gets in the striker's head. But to finish it like that at his age, I mean,
and after an hour of being at the coalface,
yes,
on his own, I mean, and that's taking something out of your legs. You're not at your freshest when you've had to do that job for the hour or so that he did, or a bit more he did on his own. So it was a great moment, and I think, obviously you look around at the bright young things that you've got, and some of them have emerged more than others during the course of the season, and you're inevitably now starting to wonder where we can add what we can add. But you probably feel as if my end is a tick. That my end will probably be okay in the Premier League. He may not start in the Premier League. Who knows where you'll be come August? But I think he's got enough about him and enough talent and obviously enough time because of his age to where you'd feel as if, he'll be okay. Yeah, we'll get something out of him in the very, very highest level, where attacking defending is a bit different in the Premier League. It's not as robust and as rugged as you've been had to put up with for the last 8 years. So, he might be one of those who catches the eye in the Premier League.
Yeah. Well, as I said, about 15 minutes of regulation time to go at this point when we're equalised. But this point, when the goal went in, we said before in the 5 minutes we could feel the tide slightly turning. But after this goal, the game just completely flipped, with Sunderland now suddenly on top and Sheffield United looking mentally tired, physically tired, players going down with cramp. But what did you make of a side? We've said that they're the youngest side ever to play in a playoff second-tier final. And they've been beaten up in a game, almost bullied, we've used words like that, for so long in a game. To have the mental strength to get back into the game and completely turn it around like that.
I think that it's very easy to apply resilience and spirit and all of that to a team with the benefit of hindsight, and there wasn't a great deal of that hanging around in the last 5 games of the regular season, and you would still be a little bit. I mean, now we've all sobered up. You've all sobered up. I wasn't. You have to be a bit concerned about the first hour, really, wouldn't you? I mean, if in terms of if you were to ask yourself what Liverpool might have done to you in that first hour, then you'd have to be a little bit concerned. But if you've seen this before, and I think I haven't seen much of Sunderland this season, and even in the semi-final, you could make an argument. Certainly, Coventry were having more of the ball and were bossing parts of the semi-final in much the same way that Sheffield United did, and yet you've come through both. And the most important 3 games of your season. There have been times when you were being beaten up in all 3 of them, and yet you've come through with the results that you wanted. And I mean, we're talking about individuals. Romain never really had the impact on the game. I think there were a lot of whispers during the week that he hadn't trained a great deal and that we're still a bit concerned about him, and we weren't sure whether that was a smokescreen. It wasn't the best of Romain Mundle, that was it, at any stage really during the game. And whether he was injured or weary or they were just frightened of his muscles tightening up, it was as well that he came out when he did, I think. So 1 or 2 things happened. Whether Lefebvre as a central midfield player facing the game was ever really part of Regis's ideas going into the game or not, I don't know, but that certainly worked for you, and that's given you food for thought. Yeah. As I say, I think any of the doubts you have about Patrick Roberts were probably answered to a degree on a big stage where he didn't look. 1 or 2 of them looked slightly overawed or a little bit. I don't know. It was more of a plain performance than a nervy performance, I thought, for an hour. It was more like, you weren't going anywhere fast, and it kind of needed somebody with a bit more belief in your ability to get a hold of the game and Lafay Mark II certainly was that. Roberts was certainly that. And, Tommy gave you a little bit more life down the left than I think the Remain had been able to, simply because of his legs. And Maenda suddenly had a mate up there with him. And one way or another, it all started to come to Trey's tackle was kind of one of those moments. I think it might be a foul, if I'm very honest. I know he got the ball, but that in 2025, that's not quite enough. But it was one of those moments. There was a moment, wasn't there, in a Champions League game earlier in the season when Conor Bradley put in a big tackle on, trying to know who it was, a PSG player, and they got T-shirts in Liverpool for that. Now, I think Trey's tackle might be another T-shirt moment. It kind of came at the right time and embodied where you'd suddenly come to in the game, and then the game's for taking. Do you think you'd have won it in extra time?
Yes, I think we looked the stronger side.
Because the penalty record's rubbish, by the way.
Yeah. I genuinely think that we looked the stronger side, and you could argue that Chris Wilder, could have made changes, or he might have gotten them back up for it. But I just think with the mental battle, I think we'd got over that, and I think we were the stronger side. And actually, just on Mundle, you mentioned Mundle, but he hadn't played 90 minutes since October.
Yeah.
So actually, I don't think we were really expecting it. We were expecting potentially a moment out of him early on in the game, but then we were expecting for him to kind of die off and eventually go off as sub. Just on that Hume challenge on Diaz, 85 minutes, because look, to me, this is a proper old-fashioned fullbacks challenge. Trey Hume's. This is Trey Hume's trademark in the Championship. Yeah. You're right. We'll see if he. We'll see if he gets away with that in the Premier League. That might be a different story. But I think this is a huge moment, because not only does Diaz go down injured and eventually goes off, but it actually, because he's down for so long, and he could have rolled off the pitch, but he didn't. And what happens then? It extends out injury time, and then in early injury time, there's a clash of heads, which extends injury time again, and then Sheffield United are down to 10 men. And then there's the moment in the 95th minute when the ball's played to Kiefer Moore's feet. What he was thinking, I don't know. I'm sure he'll be asked 1,000 times in the future by Sheffield United fans. But a sloppy pass from Kiefer Moore, when he was one of their better players in the afternoon, straight to Watson. And with everybody panicking on the pitch, seemingly in the late stages, young lad coming through the academy, hardly really played if you look at the appearances he's made. Announced, as you said earlier, signing for Brighton. There's been much discussion about that and where his head's been. And he had the most composure out of anybody to stroll up and not try and smash it in the top corner, to pass it around two Sheffield United defenders into the bottom corner, where if you look from the view behind him, the goalkeeper, there's an inch between the goalkeeper's glove and the post, and he managed
the goalkeeper too. I think Cooper's a really good goalkeeper. So, I mean, he took some beating.
But for Watson to come on, and you've mentioned the Dan Neil thing, and Luke O'Nien going off injured, but then celebrating at the end. How does football keep writing these stories?
Well, I'm going to say this now as the soccer commentator for CBS and Paramount Plus. It's a low-scoring sport. Yeah. And I kind of had to say that from time to time in commentary for an American audience. And so the value of a goal is, on the one sense, amplified because you can win 1-0, but 1-0 is never enough. And you're not going down to the Sunderland end of the court and getting some points every time you go. You're going down to the Sunderland end of the court quite often during the first 60, 70 minutes of the game, and you're getting one. Just one. That's all you're getting. And so we all know, and the players know. The players know in their minds, they've been in enough of these games. And the fans know, we all know, that what we're watching here is a 1-0 game. It's a 1-0 going on 2-0. Let's be frank, but it's only 1-0. And whilst it's 1-0, yeah, I mean, and whilst there are players of the caliber you've got, we haven't even mentioned Job in this conversation. I mean, he's probably your best player. Yeah. We haven't mentioned him, and he had a good game, not a great game, but he had a good game, I think. But while there are players like that on the field, it's, again, making the comparison with the games that I usually commentate on for CBS Champions League, it's it's what Real Madrid have been now for about 4 or 5 years. I have witnessed some of these games that they've won from absolutely nowhere. And of course, the problem is that every time you go out against them, you think, we're 2 up here, but this might not be enough against these guys. Well, I'm sure that you had in your minds that, well, we did it in the semi-final. Why can't we do it in the final? And yeah, it's a teenager's goal in a strange sort of way. It's a bit naive, really, what you're thinking about. Honestly, you're not going to beat him from there, and you're certainly not going to side foot it past him from there. He's a good goalkeeper. You're going to have to tuck it right inside the post. Well, none of that was on Tommy Watson's mind.
Yeah, unbelievable. And I talked to you after the Wigan playoff final, but you didn't commentate on that one. But you did commentate on this one. So people will be looking for keepsakes and things that they can keep around the match and have and all this. And obviously, you are very famous, like our very own Nick Barnes, in terms of your commentary notes that you make on your games. And I'm sure these will be released, the notes that you took for this game.
Yeah, there'll be a print of my research notes in the style of the research notes that I had in front of me at Wembley yesterday. Yeah, on our site, commentarycharts.com by Wednesday, I would think. It's an unusual memento in so much that it's a screenshot of kickoff. Tommy Watson's just a name down the bottom of the page, And so, in a sense, wherever you hang it, if it's in the downstairs loo or whatever, man cave. I can't believe people really have man caves. It's there, and you tell your own story. You tell anybody looking at it where you were, whether you're at Wembley, whether you were back on Wearside, or who you were with. Those kind of moments that the memories that we have of football, which are ridiculous landmarks in our lives, far, far too big, really, but they are. And we remember everything about where we experienced the drama of the occasion. And so it's, the commentary chart's quite an interesting souvenir, if you like. We started commentary charts as a little cottage industry with games that I'd commentated on. And fans of clubs like Sunderland said, where's our commentary chart? Well, sorry, I wasn't there in 73, not quite that old. And so we've actually asked quite a lot of the clubs to nominate the game that they would like a commentary chart of. And I've done retrospective research as if I was commentating on that game tomorrow. And we asked Sunderland fans, and I think you helped in that, to nominate the game they wanted a year or so ago. And 73 just got edged out by the Wickham game. And so I created a commentary chart for that game. But this time, I've already done all the research. It's there and ready to go. And so, I suppose I'm actually trying to find the audio soundtrack to what I said at the end of the game too, because I think those moments, it's vanity, I suppose, on my part. And by the way, Daniel Mann's a really, really good commentator, really good friend of mine. I've mentored him a little bit in his career, and I think I'm glad he got the final, because I think he's really good. But I put my own spin on it. I think we haven't mentioned your friends down the road, the Carabao Cup champions, but that's a big part of this. Having that fixture back is a big, big part of this. And I think I said something at the end, this season, Oxford, Preston, Plymouth, next season, Liverpool, Manchester, and best of all, Newcastle. And that, I think, captures what this is about. And listen, who knows? You might get 94 points, you might get 14. I mean, who knows? And who cares right now? You will be playing against Liverpool and Manchester City and Arsenal and Newcastle United twice next season in the Premier League, the EPL, as we call it in the States. And that's your prize. And that just makes going to the Stadium of Light better. It does. I mean, you can occasionally hear fans, and Sheffield United have been one of these clubs for the last 6 years. Oh, I think we prefer the Championship seasons. You don't. You really, really don't. You want to see Mohamed Salah at the Stadium of Light. You want to see Erling Haaland at the Stadium of Light. You want to see how Dan Ballard gets on against him. You want to see how Trey Hume handles, the best left winger in the Premier League. That's what you want to see, and that's what you've won. That's what everything we've just discussed in the last hour was about. That's the passport you won, and never mind the money and everything that goes with it. You'll need if it's 220 million, you'll need it. You'll bloody well need it. But it's for you and for the most important people. And it probably sounds a little bit kind of patronizing, me saying, "Oh, the fans made the." You did. You really, really did make that special occasion yesterday. Just how much it meant to Sunderland fans to be back in the big league for the first time in 8 years, and in fact it's a season more, isn't it, since there was a time where derby, isn't it? Because did they go down as you came up?
That's a good question.
I think it's one more year, isn't it? I think, or maybe they didn't. Whatever.
Yeah.
But it's FA Cup ties don't count, do they?
Yeah.
It's been a while. I must tell you a lovely story, and you'll enjoy this. Alan Pardew is a friend, and we had a son who was at university in Durham. And as a little treat, I got some tickets for a St James's Park derby as Alan's guests. And my wife and I flew up and took Charlie and one of his mates out for supper in Durham the night before the game. It was a 12:30 kickoff. So we were wheeled into St James's and we were sipping champagne in this plush sort of VIP room at about 10:15, which wasn't a great look for a young student, but there you go. What the hell? The Pardew family joined us, his wife and daughters, for a bit of lunch. And then we wheeled out into the director's box seats there at St James's to watch this wonderful occasion. I hadn't seen Alan all day. Of course, he's at work. You lot were 3 up at half time. There was a guy tearing his season ticket up in front of Alan. The Pardew family were getting so much stick they didn't even come out for the second half. I sat on my own. They stayed in. And when because it was early kickoff, we managed to get a flight back from Newcastle back to London. And when I got to the kind of little BA lounge there, bloody John O'Shea was in there. I said, "You spot my day, mate." Laughing away. Well, they're the kind of memories that whatever. You've had those days against them, and you might be having those days against them again. And that's what you've won. That's what you've won. The chance to have those days again.
You've mentioned the big teams. You've mentioned the big players, the Salahs of the world, the Haalands of the world. But Clive Tyldesley, has it been a while since you've gone to the Stadium of Light to commentate, especially on a Premier League game?
Well, I've done very little Premier League football in my career. Weirdly, the games that I've done for Amazon Prime in the last 4 years are the only TV live games I've ever done. I had a spell at the BBC in the 90s when I worked on Match of the Day. And then, of course, ITV got the rights to that Saturday night show, the good old Premiership. And I called games for highlights. But the first live Premier League game I've ever commentated on was like 4 or 5 years ago for Amazon Prime. So I've only done a handful. So, yeah, it's a while since we had, I still call ITV we, even though they binned me. But we used to have the highlights. We used to have the rights to the FA Cup. So I've probably done a couple of cup ties up there.
Yeah.
It's an interesting championship that you're leaving, because I think Birmingham City and Wrexham have both got the dough to I'm not saying they're going to go all the way through, but they might go all the way through into the playoff picture next season.
I'll challenge.
But I think it's a very interesting Premier League that you're going into, because I don't see anybody who's easy to pick off. I think if you were talking about the worst of the top 17, you cannot believe Manchester United and Tottenham Hotspur are going to be in those positions again next season. West Ham haven't looked great, but I think Graham Potter knows how to get a team functional. I think Everton will be a lot better with Moisey in their new stadium. And that raft of clubs that have come up since you were there, the raft of clubs that came up like 3 and 4 seasons ago, Brentford, Brighton, Bournemouth, Fulham, Palace, Forest, they don't look, and none of them look as if they're going anywhere soon, you know? I mean, Villa are even one of those, and they're a Champions League team now. So, and then they're your good friends from across the river. So it's a proper Premier League that you're coming into, and I don't know what Leeds and Burnley will do, but they're a month ahead of you in terms of deciding what they're going to do. But yeah, I mean, you don't need telling any of that. No. Just enjoy it. I mean, just enjoy the prospect of going in with those guys. And as I say, in particular, having your derby back and having these world famous superstars coming to the Stadium of Light.
Yeah. Well, there is that discussion about the three promoted sides going down yet again from the Premier League, but I think we'll leave that conversation for another day. I think, Clive, I think we'll park that one. But just out of interest, what's left commentary wise before the season's done?
I'm in Munich next Saturday. I'm for the Champions League final, and then I'm done. I had some interest expressed in me covering the whatever it's called, the Gianni Infantino Memorial Trophy, which he's making the rules up as he goes along for. My heart and soul's just not in that. I don't think it should be happening. It would have been an awful lot of research to and yeah, whatever. I just couldn't. I couldn't bring myself to say yes to the kind of offers that I was getting to go and work on that. Who knows that there's a possibility I might work for an American network next summer, next year as a bit of a finale. But I've got another year on my CBS contract, so yeah, there are 15 English clubs in the Champions League next year, or something like that. Still counting. Some of them might still get in. I'm not sure. I'm not quite sure what the rules are now. There's as we speak, obviously there's one place or a couple of places up for grab today, and Tottenham Hotspur. I don't know anymore. No, I try not to sound kind of. I hate it when people say these days because that really dates you. So I never ever say that. Yeah. But there are some fairly crazy things happening. But it's been a wonderful. There've been some wonderful stories. You know, Palace is a wonderful story. Spurs is a wonderful story. Newcastle's a wonderful story. It really, really is. And you know, so yeah, we'll see what happens. I would have loved, if I'm honest, I'd love Barca and PSG. I think that would have been bonkers next weekend. That would have been a real crazy match, but Inter might just know a bit too much for PSG. We'll find out. Yeah.
Well, enjoy Munich and enjoy a well-earned break in the summer.
Enjoy this. I'm sorry to sound like Uncle Clive, but enjoy this. I repeat my main messages today. Do not feel sorry for Sheffield United. We'll feel sorry for them. You enjoy it. You've won it fair and square. You've won the moment and the memories and the passport. Now enjoy it. Yeah, it's going to be tough, but what the heck? I mean, life's for living, and you haven't lived this life that you're about to live now for 8 years. So, look forward to it. Embrace it. Love it.
Yeah, we certainly will. Well, we'll recover from this lost week, as it's probably going to end up being, and then we'll see where we are after that. But it's been an absolute pleasure, Clive, and hopefully, give us a shout if you cover Sunderland at all next season, and we'll speak again.
I'm just off down to tidy up Trafalgar Square and do my bit for the community. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Apparently, just on that, a lot of Sunderland fans tried to clean up. There? They tried. Well, yeah, there's probably a few still there. Probably a few missed the match and just stayed in Trafalgar. But apparently, a bunch of Sunderland fans did try and clean up, and they were told to leave by the authorities, and they would clean it up properly. Apparently that was the story there. But yeah, if you are up the Stadium of Light or covering Sunderland, give us a shout, Clive. It'd be great to catch up with you again.
All right, thank you.
Good stuff. Brilliant. Thanks again for everyone for listening. I'll say it again, Sunderland are a Premier League club, because I'm sure you're going to believe us at some point. And all the reaction is on the Roker Report website or our daily releases on How We're the Podcast. But from us, bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
All right, we are going where?
Back to school shopping.
This is the Playoffs for Parenting, aka getting ready to get back to school.
As we get ready for back to school.
Doesn't matter your income, your race, your background, whether you have a disability or not.
Our public schools are a place where all kids feel like they belong.
My child.
My children.
My family.
My friends' kids. My community.
All students.
All students.
All students belong in a great public school.
Let's get ready for back to school at nea.org/backtoschool.